Hey, how's it going, guys? This is Daniel and this is Tech Tuning, and on today's video I'm going to be showing you guys how to replace your shifter in your 85 or 1982 to 1985 Toyota Celica or Celica Supra. My shifter bushings are definitely pretty worn out, and I was looking around on eBay to see how much prices were for like a bushing kit, and it's pretty much the same price as a cheaper short shifter option. So I ended up picking one up for like $36 or so, and I'm just going to be putting that in today and showing you guys how I do it. I watched a video a long time ago from someone else whose channel name I can't remember, but if I find it I'll put it in the link down below. And I watched another review of somebody who talked about their experience with one of these eBay short shifters. Both of them sounded pretty positive, so that was why I decided to go ahead and pick one up. And I'm really hoping putting this in will make the shifter feel better and make the driving experience better. So yeah, I guess without further ado, let's get into it and I'll show you guys how I'm going to go about it. Alright, so I'm trying to give you guys the best view I can from the interior, but as you can see we're inside, have the shifter in neutral, and from what I saw online, the steps seem pretty easy. We basically just have to take all this shifter trim around here out. So what I'm going to start with first is going to be all the basic stuff, like I'm going to take out the ashtray, which just pops out, take off the shift knob, and then we'll start taking out the radio trim before we get to this bigger piece in the middle. So we have 3 hidden screws that are going to be for the climate control. There's one right above the fan speed, one right in the top middle, and there's going to be one right below the left and right control. We're going to take those out, take all the switches which just pop right off, and then we can pull this plate right off. After you've taken the climate control out, which is those 3 hidden screws, then we have to take out the radio cover, which is going to be 2 screws on each side at the bottom here, and 1 screw at the top corners right here. From this point, I'm not as certain what comes next, but from taking a look at it, I believe we're going to have to take out the 2 screws on the side here. There's 2 on the center console here, and then I think the screws we already took out up here and here should make this whole thing come out. I'm not certain, so we'll find out as we go. Alright, so at this point I've taken the 2 screws out of the side here and the 2 screws up here, and this whole console is loose now, but it looks like we're still going to have to remove the handbrake cover in order to get it fully out. You might be able to just pop it out if you shimmy it around, but my panels are already cracked and I don't want to risk ruining them more. So I'm going to see there's 2 screws that are at the very back of this console. I'll take the camera off to show you in a second. We're going to take those out and see if maybe then this whole handbrake console will lift out, and then we can take this one out. So from the passenger seat, you can see this 1 screw here I was talking about, and if we come around to the driver's seat, you can see there's another one down there. I think taking those out should be able to help us remove this entire thing. Alright, so it looks like even though we took those 2 out, there's probably still another screw or 2 in the bottom here. I'm going to empty out my center console and we'll see what else is at the bottom. Alrighty, so like I thought, there is 2 more screws right in the bottom here. Let's take those out. Okay, so once you have all those screws out, there's this little plastic cover right here at the bottom of the handbrake. Pop that out, that way you can take the whole thing up and out. And there's 1 wiring connector that goes to your switch for your rear wiper, and there's going to be 1 for your adjustable mirrors. We're going to disconnect those and keep going. We have our console totally out now, and you can see we are left with a lot of exposed room here. We also have a lot of goodies in the car, which we can pull all those out. So since we've gotten that center console out now, we should be able to just gently lift this up and over. If we fiddle it with the shifter a little bit, and that should come out. We can put this to the side, and here we have the main shifter assembly. So I will take some time just to clean this up all a little bit later, but for now I'm just going to keep progressing with the video. The next thing we're going to do is take off this rubber boot, which this should come out with the 4 Phillips screws we have here. Alright, so I took a second just to vacuum everything out just because it was getting kind of gross, but we're still working on trying to slide this piece for the rubber boot off. I'm looking at it now, and I'm not even sure if I really need to take it off. There's 4 screws that hold this onto the trans tunnel, one of which was like barely hand tight, the other 2 were like kind of tight, and one was just missing. I'm wondering if I can just like pull this up like this and do the rest of the job from here, because I think this is just a cap which covers from the trans tunnel. If I can just pop this bottom piece up. Yeah, so it looks like this other piece is just a rubber cap, and then there's 4 more Phillips screws under here which we take out, and that's where the new shifter bolts in. I think we can take that out. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about. So if you're looking at it from up close, what I'm referring to was this rubber cap. Mine's ripped anyway, but I don't think we can even run it once we put the short shifter in, so that doesn't matter. But I'm talking about these 4 screws are going to be the ones to come out, which are the direct mount shifter style for the W58. Those will come out, and then the whole shifter should just pop out as easy as that. And after that, we can worry about getting this off the OEM shifter and putting it onto the new one. But yeah, I think if we just take these out, this should come up, so let's give that a shot. Alright, so we got the 4 screws out. We're just going to lift the shifter out. And we have it out now. We can see our bushing is definitely not looking too great, so let's get some rags to try and clean this up. Okay, so I managed to get the whole rubber boot off of the OEM assembly, which I'm not really thrilled with the way I had to go about it. I had to cut a little bit of this rubber part on the inside in order to slip it over the wider part of the OEM shifter here. The OEM shifter, unlike the new aftermarket short shifter, it goes from a thin barrel to a really thick one, and this piece is kind of sandwiched on top of it, where this smaller hole goes over this, and then the larger hole here goes over this. So I wanted to reuse this just so I could keep this in the car and have that same sealing protection that it had before. So all I did was I clipped this plastic ring that holds it around the larger part, and I just trimmed a little section of this to open it up so that I could pull the whole thing over the wider part here. Otherwise, I would have had to completely cut it out because there's no way to get the rest of this stuff off since the ball joint that it sits in is right there. Either way, the next thing that we're going to start doing is going to be fitting this onto the new aftermarket shifter and putting the aftermarket shifter back in here now that we've cleaned it out. So I have the aftermarket shifter here that I bought, and like I said, this one was only like $30 something. The shift knob I have from an older car of mine, but it's a weighted shift knob, so I figured it would go pretty good with this new shifter setup. And all I did so far was I just took the retaining nuts off of it and added some more grease to the inside of the shifter. I just didn't feel like there was enough from the factory. And so what we have to do now is just take off these 4 nuts, and we should then be able to just drop the shifter in and screw it down with the new extended hardware. Alright, so I'm just going pretty easy on these bolts here because the ones that came with the shifter are extended, so I had to use those. I couldn't reuse the OEM ones. And I'm just not too confident in the quality of the bolts. I don't want to over tighten them too much and risk breaking one or stripping it. But I've got it pretty securely on there. I don't think it's going to loosen up at all. And I think going through and taking it apart and adding more grease was definitely a good step that I'd recommend, because it definitely feels very rigid. So I think having that extra grease in there will help us out big time. Alright, so I just took an extra minute to tighten these two bolts for the actual shifter arm too. They were just a little bit loose and I could feel it was wiggling around a bit, but I think everything is good now. I'm just going to go through, try to snug everything up one more time before we start putting it back together. Alright, so I'm running into an issue now where the new shifter, the angle it sits at, is not allowing the trim to go back on over it. It's being a royal pain because I'm not really sure how I can get around this, because the problem is just the way the shifter comes and pokes out is still too far forward for me to just slip the trim back on. Alright, so as you guys can see, we've finished installing the shifter. Definitely way firmer than the OEM one was. Probably also see here one of my trim pieces broke, which I'm not too thrilled about the sacrifice of that to get this in. But hopefully I can just super glue that back in. But off of a feel, it's definitely super notchy. It's a little tough getting into some gears, and it's a little tough to see what gear you're in, but I believe I have everything installed correctly, so I'm guessing this is just the way it's designed to feel. Either way, we're going to go on a short test drive now. We're going to see how it does. The shifts are insanely short right away, I can tell. First to second was like barely any movement compared to before. Alrighty guys, so that's gonna about wrap it up. I would say overall for the money, this was a really good buy, and I think it fixed my problem. The shifting feels a lot better, and I'm pretty happy with the quality of the short shifter. The install is definitely a bit more of a pain than I thought it was gonna be. I know I said it was gonna be straightforward, but it was a little tricky getting the interior stuff back in, and I just wasn't too thrilled that some of my pieces of plastic broke, but that's just the problem with my car, not with the shifter. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope it helps you out, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.